Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our FAA Data Challenge Q&A webinar here today. Gonna give it a few minutes while others join us, and then we will get started here just a couple minutes after the top of the hour. Okay, with that, I think we have everyone who's attending is kind of trickling down right now. So that I think we can go ahead and get started for today. I'll kick us off once again. Thank you everyone for joining the 2024 FAA Data Challenge Q&A webinar session. So I think everyone here should be very familiar that this contest has been going on for several months now, and we are just a few weeks shy of the submission deadline on August 22nd. So this session is directly focused on, we'll do a little bit of background on the competition because I know everyone likes to get a refresher, but ideally this session is for you all to ask questions directly to our challenge sponsors here at the FAA, and that's Marcita and Steve who have joined us today, as you all know. So with that, we can go ahead and kick it off. So our agenda for today, again, we'll just do a quick round of introductions to remind everyone who we are. We'll do a high-level overview of the competition. Again, I think everyone's very familiar, but just a short refresher. And then we'll go through some of the administrative items for the contest, but again, really focusing on the ending of it, where we can have the Q&A open. I know we have several questions that have already come in that we're ready to answer. Any of our participants can ask questions throughout this webinar, and we'll get those answered today. So with that, I guess since I'm already on the mic, I'll do a quick introduction for myself. Dan Wrights, Senior Project Manager here at HeroX. You all have probably seen my messages going back and forth on the platform, just helping to facilitate this contest on behalf of the FAA. And then I'll pass it over to Marcita for her introduction.
Marcita Dill, Acting Chief Data Officer.
Hello, and then I'll go to me. I'm Steve Bogutsky. I'm the Division Manager also in the Chief Data Office. I manage the Business Intelligence and Analytics Enablement Division. Thank you.
So we're excited to host this challenge again. So last year was our first time opening up a data challenge to college students. And this year we wanted to continue to build off of our relationships with universities, not only from a research aspect, but to also create an opportunity to solicit the ideas that you have on how we can evolve the work that we do, and also to build off of your studies in the space of data science and aviation. So this challenge is centered around how do we use data more effectively in an infocentric NAS. And we made it open-ended, and Steve will cover the category in the next slide. But we've made it open-ended intentionally because we understand that there's different aspects that we think that your ideas can come into play. And over the course of the challenge, we want you to think broadly. We don't expect that everyone coming into it will have prior aviation and or FAA experience, but we're encouraging you to leverage the support of your professors within your institutions, and also what you know from your experience, to offer up ideas on leveraging data and innovative ways, particularly around advanced analytics and introducing the use of AI and machine learning.
Great. Now I'll tackle the solution categories. I'll try to go through this kind of quickly. Hopefully at this point, this is less news to everyone on the call and more of a reminder. But as Marcita was saying, so this is super exciting for us. What we hope to see is what you perceive to be the challenges in what we call the NAS, the National Airspace System, or in the aerospace ecosystem more generally, and how we can leverage technology to overcome those challenges. So it is open-ended. And some of the interest and some of the learning that we get out of it is by seeing what you perceive to be the challenges. That being said, we do have categories outlined to kind of guide you toward what we're seeking as far as the problem space that you'll identify. And so those categories are to improve aviation safety. So we're looking at there. So obviously aviation safety is the hallmark of what the Federal Aviation Administration does. So we're looking at ways, potentially, these are just like suggestions that you can build off of or just to get your kind of brain towards the ideation phase, is we're looking at how we can apply the use of advanced analytics, the use of data in more advanced ways, including artificial intelligence and machine learning, when it comes to aviation safety, like we talked about here, to discern trends, to correlate events, to start doing some predictive forecasting. Those are the sort of things that we're looking for in the aviation safety category. But again, those are kind of suggestions to get you thinking, but you can go more broad than what we just suggest here. We're also looking at improving operational efficiency of the NAS. So again, when we say the NAS, we're talking about the National Airspace System. So there you can start thinking about how could we get more airplanes, more aircraft, more anything that flies into the sky in a safe and controlled manner. How can we use data and analytics to support that outcome? So that's what we want to see there. That's what we're hoping to see. What solutions do you recommend for achieving that operational efficiency? Sustainable aviation. That's another thing with the different things with climate change going on and different things we're trying to achieve there. We're looking for your advanced solutions to how we might use data and analytics to achieve advances in sustainable aviation. And then finally, assisting with rapidly evolving new and novel uses of the NAS. The challenge there is that within the National Airspace System, probably more than any time ever, there's many new entrants coming in. So we have what we call our vertical lift aircraft. So these are ones that no longer take off from a runway, but they're maybe propeller driven and they lift them vertically. We have air taxis that are trying to enter the National Airspace System. So you might be able to rent, say, like some kind of vehicle, some kind of autonomous vehicle in the future and go from one place to another. All of those things are going to complicate how we control the National Airspace System. And so our intuition is that there is data and analytics that we can use to better manage how we introduce all of those new entities into the NAS. And we're hoping that you might propose solutions for how we might go about doing that using the technology and the learning that you're exposed to in your university experience. So again, those are some categories that we'll be hoping that you align to. But again, you can expand and use your creativity, use your knowledge, use your analytical experience to go beyond. Again, try to align to these categories, but expand your mind and really wow us with your problem statement and your proposed solution. Next slide, please. So again, here, these are some data resources. Again, this is not an exhaustive list of data that you might use to conduct your analysis. So the way that this challenge will work, and I'll talk a little bit about this in the next slide, is that in the first phase, the one you should be working on now, you're more about the kind of design or conveying the problem that you intend to solve. And you're also going to tell us about how you intend to solve that problem. But our expectation is that you're going to use data, if not real world data, synthetic data that mimics real world data to solve that problem. And ultimately, if you're selected to go to the final event, you will have actually had to conduct your analysis and tell us about the outcomes of what you performed and how you solved the problem, the perceived problem. So in line with doing all of that, you're going to need data. So here are some data sets that might be of value to you in supporting your project. Again, these aren't all data sets. You can use other data sets other than these ones, but these are some suggested data sets that might be a resource to you. I won't go through them all individually, but they are here for your reference. Next slide. And so the challenge structure, again, hopefully this is not news to you. Hopefully at this point, this is more of a reminder, but right now we're currently in phase 1. So again, the idea here is to ideate and kind of describe to us what is the problem that you perceive in line with those categories I described a couple slides back. And you're going to describe, what data are you going to use to solve this problem? What analytical techniques are you going to use to solve this problem? And your purpose here is to describe to us, to convince us that you have a good practical plan. You have to convince us of 2 things to be successful, I would say, is that 1, there is a real problem that you have identified that you have the means of resolving or proposing a resolution to. And then you have to convince us that the data and the techniques that you're going to use will actually be successful in solving that problem. So that's phase 1. It's describing kind of your plan. It's describing the problem set and the data that you intend to use to solve that problem. With that, we'll review all of the proposals that come in. From those proposals, we'll select 10 finalists who will attend the phase 2 final event during the beginning of next year. During that event is when you should have conducted your analysis, and you'll be presenting to us and to the judging panel, the advisory committee, you'll be presenting the results of your analysis. And that's how we will ultimately select the winners for the competition. So that's kind of going through the 2 phases a little quickly. Hopefully, again, it's a reminder. But of course, if you have any questions about it, we will have an opportunity to take those. Next slide, please. I think this I hand off to Marcita, please.
So one of the changes that we made from last year's to this year's challenge is we're allowing individual students to submit an entry in addition to teams. So that's something else for you to think about is who's going to be supporting you in your participation. We are requiring that each team have a sponsor. So this is a professor at your institution who will sign off on the agreement as the sponsor. And part of that is because the award money goes to the university. So we want to make sure that we have a conduit to work through in the event that you are selected as one of our winning teams. But what we've also found over the course of this challenge is that professor can be a great support system to you. So some of them have knowledge in the aviation space. Others may offer you lab time to conduct your analysis and also be a great sounding board for your research, and can also help with the review of not only your abstract submission, but also your technical paper. So I encourage you to think, to really think about, who can serve best in that capacity, and making sure that you've solidified that role leading into the August abstract submission deadline. And then another thing to take into consideration is we are planning on having our finale event in the spring semester. So your sponsor can also help with making sure your professors know in the event that you need to be away for a couple of days to participate in the finale event that will be hosted in the DC metropolitan area. And then finally, what I wanted to mention about the eligibility is the team members, including the faculty advisors and the students, must be citizens or permanent residents of the United States. So please take that requirement seriously as you're forming your team, because that's one of the areas or aspects that we'll be looking at for all the participants.
Moving into the timeline, I think I can cover that. So obviously the challenge has been open for a while now, and this is just a nice refresher on our timeline, today being August 6th. The next major milestone for everyone to pay attention to here is August 22nd, specifically August 22nd at 5 p.m. Eastern time. This is when all submissions are due by. The platform does shut off the submission capability at that time, so no late submissions are allowed to be submitted. So please get all of your submissions in beforehand, and we'll look forward to reviewing all of those. Kicking off our review process, that's really the end of August through most of September. The FAA has a steering committee that will be reviewing all of your solutions and identifying those 10 finalists. And we are aiming to announce those 10 finalists on September 20th, with phase 2 then starting the Monday right after, September 23rd. And as Marcita has been mentioning, there is the overall kind of finalist showcase that will be happening in Washington, D.C. We're still planning those dates, but we do know that it will be in March of 2025. So you do have some time yet before that one. And obviously all of the finalists will be invited to that event to come showcase their proposals. Within that, here is your kind of evaluation criteria that your proposals are going to be submitted against. So obviously you have these 5 categories on your understanding of the problem, the data, the solution, the team and the plan, and the innovation and novelty. The HeroX submission form is actually set up to really drive the development of your proposals in line with this scoring criteria. This is what the steering committee will be using as it goes through. So please, make sure that as you're writing your proposals, you have these things in mind. They are listed on the challenge page itself, so you can actually pull them out and see, and this is the universal standard for what everyone is going to be graded against in their proposals. So please take a look at that. And of course, if you have any questions about it, you can always ask in the challenge forum. But as you go through that submission form, these kind of sections will naturally come to the surface as you're filling it out. And lastly, prizes and travel reimbursements. So for phase 1, each of the top 10 finalist university will receive $1,000 as an acknowledgement of their really innovative ideas and an early congratulations. And they will also be reimbursed for up to $8,000 to all the travel costs to that final event in DC. So we really like to think that that should be enough to get the whole team out to DC for their showcase, and we're really excited to be able to offer that. For phase 2, things get a bit more competitive. So we actually do have awards planned for all 10 positions, but this time they are going to be in a rank order list that the steering committee will be deciding at that showcase based on those final presentations. So we have first all the way through 5th in kind of a tiered order from 25,000 down to 5,000, and then 6th through 10th position will all receive $3,000 each for the final prizes. And with that, that takes us to the end of our kind of re-overview of the 2024 FAA Data Challenge. I'm going to jump into the Q&A, which is the purpose of our entire call today. And we have had a couple questions come through, and then I've got things listed here. Again, I'm fortunate that I have the mic. We got first 2 questions are things that I think I can dive into from things that have come in. So first, there's a question of, can you expand on the letter of support from the professor, and is this required? Yes, a letter of support is required from a professor at your university. When you're on the submission form on the HeroX platform, there is an example letter of support there that can be taken and actually just filled out. You do not have to use that one, but we do recommend that you do. If your professor or institution is offering a different letter of support, just kind of compare them to the example provided and make sure that they are in the same essence and covering the same items to acknowledge that support. And then you will attach that to your submission form and send it in. And then the second one was, are we expected to have citations on the proposal given we have very limited space? And the answer to that one is kind of in the middle. First off, as you saw on the scoring criteria, no, we are not scoring your proposals on your citations. So if this is not something that you need to go through, and I know since I'm talking to university students, there are all types of citation formats and requirements to do that when you're writing your papers. That is not required here. I'm not going to look at it and say, oh, you didn't follow this specific AMA format, and therefore that hurts you. So that said, when you're looking at doing citations, you please do, you put in your citations, but you can put them in minimally. Just, putting state, you can put a hyperlink into it if you need to. And I believe we also have a space for supporting documentation. You can easily have just a Word document on there with your citations listed out well in the supporting documents section. So yes, please be cognizant of the space and do not just take up tons and tons of characters writing a proper citation format out. No, we're not going to be grading you on that specific component.
And I
mhm.
saw the question in the chat about
Great.
background necessary, and I would say there's no background requirement. We had a couple of interdisciplinary teams that participated in last year's competition that did really well. I believe the GMU team was an example of that, and they placed in the top 3. So we welcome petroleum engineering majors. And I would say, everybody brings something different to the table. So, think about others who can support you in other areas to kind of fill gaps that related to your proposal.
Awesome. Thank you, Mercida. Another question was, are there specific applications that really need to be focused on here? Steve, you kind of gave a really great overview in the different categories of this competition. Is there anything that competitors need to focus on specifically, or do they need to be worried about if the FAA has maybe already done something in that category?
Excuse me, that's an interesting question. I would say, from my perspective, no, there isn't necessarily, other than the 4 categories that we described that we'd like you to align to. Instead of thinking about the things to avoid, like the challenges we've maybe already attempted to resolve, I would recommend thinking more about the data that you're going to use and the means that you're going to use to solve the problem, and ensure that you have a pragmatic, very real way to demonstrate how you're going to overcome the challenge that you describe. So I guess it's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question. I would say don't worry necessarily about what we've already tried to solve. I think there's plenty of space to do things even better than what we've already kind of like started on. So that shouldn't limit you. But in that consideration, you should be thinking more about how you're going to solve the problem. That's where I would focus your effort at. Don't worry about what's already been tackled. Just take whatever you perceive to be the problem, but just ensure that you have a really good plan and a really good data set and verified techniques that will adequately solve that problem. I would say that would be your best bet. Hopefully I answered it a little different.
I think that was awesome. Thank you. The next one is, do students have to be in an undergraduate program, or can they also be in a master's program or higher?
Yeah, no requirement. Last year we had it was split between undergrad and PhD students. I don't remember if we had any master students, but we accept all participants in the challenge. And I was going to say, one of the part of the feedback that we received last year was acknowledging kind of where students were in their studies. So we're also thinking about an opportunity to acknowledge potentially the top graduate team or the top undergraduate team. But once we see who submitted and who the 10 finalists are, we'll see if that still makes sense.
Okay, great. Next, a question that's always at top of mind is, how can the prize funds be used?
So the key piece to this is the funds get dispersed to the university. So we defer to them on how those funds get allocated.
And Steve, I know you mentioned earlier about the data sources, and we have a comprehensive list of data sources that are provided. And you said that additional data sources outside of that list are welcomed. Is there anything specific contestants need to do when using a data source that was not listed in that slide?
Yeah, I think it's going to be incumbent on the participants to demonstrate the validity of that data set and its applicability to the problem that they're trying to solve. So if it's a data set that's we're unfamiliar with, that's fine. That's not a problem. But we're going to have it won't just be trust that that's a good data set. You're going to have to explain to us, okay, here's the metadata associated with that data set. Here's some just different descriptions of that data set, and just convince us that it's an appropriate data set to use for the challenge that you're trying to solve. Other than that, long as you can demonstrate it's a legitimate, useful data set, then there are no real restrictions. It's just making sure that you can convey that legitimacy to us.
And if you did an internship this summer and you have access to data for a company that you've worked with, this is not the challenge to use that data without their permission. So please make sure any data that you have access to through an employment opportunity that you get that cleared.
All right, thank you. That is the end of the questions that actually, no, I have one more. So you kind of alluded that this is really looking towards the future of the NAS and the things that the FAA is working on with it. We'd love to get a question about really what does that future look like for the FAA, and just kind of what's the dream there?
Steve had a
It's an exciting question, right? Like, I think anyone who answers that question who works for the FAA is going to give you a different answer, and that's the thing. And I would propose that to you when you're considering your proposal, your challenge response, is that the Federal Aviation Administration is a very big organization. We have very many facets that's under our kind of regulatory domain, from airports to aircraft to the air people who are flying them, that whole gamut. So what the future looks like, it's a little different based on if you're working in certification or if you're working in, say, air traffic control. They're all going to tell you something different. We come from the chief data office. So I know, like, for me, I'm super excited about how we can apply AI and ML to advancing all of those categories we talked about earlier. So if you ask me about what the future of the FAA is going to look like, it's going to be that leveraging of data and technology to better space aircraft, to get more predictive in our forecasting, to get better oversight of our regulated entities. But that's my perspective from the chief data office. You talk to someone from air traffic, they're going to see something different. Aircraft cert is going to talk about all the new novel items that they're certifying. But that should be the exciting thing for you as a challenge participant, is that this is a huge open field of which you can describe any problem that you perceive and pick the way that you want to solve it. So hopefully that breadth of opportunity is exciting for you.
Yeah, you're ditto everything Steve said. Your curiosity and interest about aviation is the future. So I can't echo this enough. This is an open challenge centered around some 4 key areas that relate to our mission. We've assembled a rockstar team of steering committee / reviewers who are ready to review your proposal. So my feedback to all of you all is submit your thoughts and ideas in the abstract. Allow us an opportunity to review that. Don't talk yourself out of participating because you're unsure about whether it's good enough or whether you have the right background. Let us do that review and evaluation to narrow it down. We're doing this because we're excited every day about the work that we do, and we want to make sure we're doing our part to engage students in opportunities in this space.
Fantastic. Okay, everyone. That's the last of my questions. Anything final from our group today?
And tell a friend, tell a friend. I'm not sure. Folks may be thinking about beaches and all that other thing during the summer and internships, but your ability to help us spread the word goes a long way about this as well.
Agreed. Thank you, Marcita. And Steve and Marcita, thank you all so much for your time today, for all of the contestants here and watching. August 22nd, 5 p.m. That's when your proposals are due. It's 5 p.m. Eastern. If you have any questions, ask in the forum and we'll get you some answers. We look forward to seeing all of your proposals. Thank you all, and we will talk to you all soon.